If Irish people can be nominated for Oscars, surely it'd start to recognise us in the film world. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through a list of some of the Irish books that I would absolutely love to see adaptations for. Whether it is on the big screen or whether it is just a little Netflix adaptation, these are some of the books that I would really love to see brought to the screen. I actually had another book on this list and it turns out that that has just recently been made into a movie. I would really love to see the adaptation of Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I think it's such an interesting look at how Ireland treated unmarried pregnant women all the way up to 1996. It's such an interesting look at the country's social history and it's just such a phenomenal book as well. But there are other books that I would love to see brought to the screen, starting with Oh My God, What a Complete Aisling by Sarah Breen and Emer McLysaght. In a kind of similar vein to Emily in Paris, I feel like this is the kind of book that a lot of young millennials or early Gen Z people are going to recognise themselves in. This book is about Aisling, who at the start of the series is 28. She is living in Dublin, but she grew up in a very rural town in Ireland. And when she and her boyfriend go away and he doesn't propose to her as she was expecting him to, things kind of turn on their head and she has to realise whether that is what she wants overall and whether the idea of a 2 up, 2 down and a family full of children is actually the dream that she'd been hoping for. The series brings Aisling through a host of situations like bereavement, like a job loss, like moving countries, like moving cities, like moving houses, like new relationships, like family members suffering with mental health. And I feel like this is something that so many people go through on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, that I feel like this is something so many people are going to see themselves in. Much akin to Emily in Paris, I think this would definitely find its best home as a Netflix special, 1 book per series, and I think it would be such an interesting way to introduce Irish culture and Irishisms to the rest of the world. Something I would love to see with a maybe slightly darker tone is I would love to see an adaptation of Only Ever Yours by Louise O'Neill. Technically, I could have gone with any of her books. And Asking for It actually has a theatrical adaptation, which I have gone to see, and it is incredibly powerful watching. But I also really think that in kind of a vein of The Handmaid's Tale, Only Ever Yours would work really well as a mini-series. This book is about Isabel and Frida, and it's set in a world where women are no longer born naturally, but are more so kind of created and manufactured. And when they are 16 years old, they are sent off to be one of 3 classes. They are either wives and companions to the young males in the community. They are teachers, so they stay in the school and they prepare the next cohort of young women, or they are concubines and they are mainly used for sexual pleasure. Isabel and Frida, at the beginning of the book, are in their last year at the school and they are deciding where they're going to go and trying to find out what the future holds for them. And in this world, there is a huge importance placed on appearances. You have to be in exactly the right weight category. You have to be in exactly the right height. You have to have not one single hair out of place. All of your clothes have to be pressed and look perfect every single day. This would all be fine if Frida wasn't starting to gain weight noticeably. And Isabel knows that this is going to put their futures into complete turmoil. So she tries her best to save her best friend, but it turns out things might be a lot deeper than she's thinking it they are. As I said, I think this might be a really good kind of modernization of The Handmaid's Tale. There is so much to discuss in this book. There is so much that I think would make for quite harrowing viewing, but also really important viewing, especially if it's by somebody who is just getting into the idea and concept of feminism. I think this would be a really great introduction to it. Staying pretty dark, I also would love to see an adaptation of 56 Days by Catherine Ryan Howard, but this does come with a stipulation. This book is very heavily based on the pandemic. It starts right at the beginning of the lockdown in Ireland. I think it's at the end of February or the beginning of March. And in the first 50 or so pages, Ciara and Oliver, who have met each other in the queue in a Tesco, start to go out, start to get to know each other a little bit better. And they decide that with the lockdown looming, they're going to move into Oliver's apartment and give their relationship a real go. They're going to see how they get along with each other in seriously close companionship and see what can happen there. What does happen is that both of them discover a lot more about the other that they were never expecting to learn, and there are a lot of kind of intricate details that the two of them didn't know that they share with each other. I was so gripped by this book. As I said, it is a pandemic book, so there is a little bit of unease there. And it's not something that I would recommend to go into if you're still a little bit PTSD feeling about the pandemic. But if you are able to read books that were set in that time period, I genuinely think it's such a great read. It's very twisty, it's very dark. There are a whole host of other characters that you meet throughout this book. And for most of the book, I genuinely had no idea where were we supposed to have known this person from? Or what was the connection that was in between these two people? The title, 56 Days, comes from the fact that 56 days after Kira and Oliver have met each other in that queue in Tesco, one of them is found on the floor of the apartment dead. The other one is obviously somehow involved in this, but we don't know which one of them is dead and why the other one was involved. You also get to see the police looking into this murder, and I'm so interested to see how that would translate into the screen. Another slightly dark book that I would really love to see an adaptation for is A Keeper by Graham Norton. This is set in a small, isolated village on the west coast of Cork, and it follows Elizabeth, who moved to New York about 10 or 15 years ago, but has come back to Ireland following the death of her mother. She is in her mother's house and going through all of her belongings and basically sorting out what can be kept and what is going to be donated or thrown away. And while she's going through all of her mother's things, she finds a bunch of letters that were sent from somebody she's never heard of, never met before, but she has a feeling that this might be Elizabeth's father. He wasn't in the picture as she was growing up, so she has no point of reference as to what he was like. She has no idea what kind of a person he was. But the letters are starting to give her an insight as to why he might not have been involved with her life. Like the other books on this list, this one is quite dark, this one is quite moody and twisty. I sped through this one in an entire evening. I think I got up to get a glass of water, or I got up to use the bathroom, and then I straight away went back to finishing the book. It engrossed me in a way that a book hadn't in such a long time while I was reading it. And I know that there has been an adaptation of Holding, which was Graham Norton's debut book, and I didn't particularly enjoy the book of that one as much, but I feel like if there was an adaptation of A Keeper, we'd really see something special here. I'd also really love to see an adaptation of Idle by Louise O'Neill. This is one of her adult books, and I think that the idea I'd really love to see brought out in this one is the description of cancel culture and of celebrity and influencers that we put on such a high pedestal in our lives. This book follows Samantha, who has reached the 3 million followers mark on Instagram, and to celebrate this, she's bringing out a basically tell-all memoir where she's going to tell everyone about her life, about her upbringing, and she's also going to fill people in on the moment that she lost her virginity with one of her best friends from school, Lisa. Lisa gets in touch with Samantha's agency and says that the situation that happened in the book is not what Lisa remembers happening in real life. It was a lot less welcome from Lisa's side, and it turns out that there wasn't as much consent given as Samantha thought that there had been. Lisa and Samantha are no longer in touch with one another, but they start to get back in contact after the book is brought out because there's a whole lot of unfinished business between the two of them. And you can really start to see sparks fly, but not particularly in the way that you're thinking they would. Another book that I think would translate really well to the big screen is Rachel's Holiday by Marion Keyes. I know that there has already been a feature film of Watermelon, which is the first book in this series, but I truly think that Rachel's Holiday could make a fantastic film. This is about Rachel. She moved over to New York a couple of years ago and is living basically a life of debauchery, of drunkenness, of cocaine-fueled nights out. And one night, things really start to get over her head. She's found on the bathroom floor having written a note to be found, and when her parents are contacted, she's brought back to Ireland and placed into the cloisters. She thinks that this is going to be a kind of a spa retreat where she's going to just go and relax and take it easy for a couple of weeks, but it turns out that the cloisters is actually a rehab centre and she is brought here to face her demons. Something that I really love about this book is the group therapy sessions that Rachel goes into, where you meet genuinely everyone from almost every walk of life in Ireland. You meet a farmer who has been struggling with loneliness and coming to terms with his sexuality throughout his life. You meet a woman who has a serious shopping addiction where her head is so buried in the sand that she cannot see the credit card debt piling and piling and piling up. And I absolutely love how gently this book is dealt with. Alcoholism is something that is very close to Marion's heart because it is something that she has gone through herself. And you can truly see that in the pages of this book. You can see the hurt that Marion has gone through, the stress and the hurt that she put her family and her loved ones through. It really translates into this book. A couple of years ago, a sequel to this, again, Rachel, also came out, where we are following most, if not all, of the same characters from this book. And I really want to see both of those brought to real life on the screen. Another book that I would really love to see a movie of is The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. This was one of my highlight books from last year, and I think it would make a really good representation of what the financial recession of 2008 to 2011 was like in Ireland. People were not really living the high life that we had been living as much anymore. People were having to pare back on their spending, and their savings were basically depleting as every day went on. At the beginning of this book, we meet Rachel, who is living in London, and she's in her 40s and pregnant with her first child. She hears the news that one of her professors in her college time is going through some medical problems. He has just suffered from a stroke, and it's not looking like he's going to come out of it. This news brings Rachel screaming back to when she was actually in college and learning from Professor Byrne and what her thoughts on him were like as a person. She was in love with this man. To put it quite bluntly, she wanted to do indescribable things to him. When Rachel was in college, she worked a part-time job in a bookshop in Cork City, and she worked there with a guy called James, and they had struck up a conversation and a friendship together, and Rachel would regale him with news of what her professor had done that day and how much she enjoyed the lectures he had been in and the things that she had been thinking about it. Everything starts to kind of fall apart when James and Fred meet for the first time at Fred's book launch in the bookshop, and they start a relationship of their own. This book also involves a character who has had an abortion, and it also focuses on the abortion referendum which took place in 2018 in Ireland. That was truly such an eye-opening read for somebody who hadn't been in Ireland for a whole lot of the campaign for that referendum. It really brought a lot of the vitriol that people were experiencing from the other sides to life in this book. I would put this into the hands of every person that I could. It is such a phenomenally written read, and I think it's something that everybody needs to read, and it's also something that needs to be made into a movie. Finally, I would genuinely love to see an adaptation of Under the Hawthorne Tree by Marita Conlon McKenna. In fact, I want to see an adaptation of the entire trilogy of these books. I have a feeling that there was a film made back sometime in the late 90s, early noughties, but I have not been able to find it. And I think it would be something that a lot of history teachers would really appreciate having. The famine of 1845 to 1849 is one of the biggest social problems that Ireland had in its history. Over 1 million people died from hunger and from disease in Ireland, and a further 1 million people also emigrated and left Ireland. We are the only country in the world that has a population smaller now than it did at the start of the 1800s. And I really think that if you show this film to children who are about 10, 11 years old, who are starting to learn about the famine in history class, it will really bring it down to a level that they can understand. And I think that that's something that you need to do when you're teaching something that is so complicated. You need to make it approachable for children. You need to make it something that they can almost see themselves in. And what more are they going to see themselves in than 3 young children, Eilidh, Michael and Peggy. They have to leave their homes and go to a faraway town named Castle Taggart in search of 2 old women who are the aunts of their mother who has just passed away. This is their only chance for survival while they are living through famine in Ireland, and it also gives such a harrowing description of what survival was like for these children on the road. Not just while they were on the road itself, but also in the events that led up to it. I genuinely think that this would be such an asset to any Irish history class. Those are just some of the Irish books that I would absolutely love to see a screen adaptation for. Who is your favourite Irish actor or actress at the moment? Or what is your favourite Irish movie? If you would love to leave me a comment but you can't think of anything you'd like to say, then just leave me the video recorder emoji. Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.